Hey there, folks. Welcome to Spectrum Pulse. We talk about music, movies, art, and culture. And today we're going to be talking about the newest album from Troye Sivan called Bloom. You know, I'm not gonna lie, I'm a little bit surprised that we've wound up in this place, or more specifically, how Troye Sivan wound up in this place. I'm sure diehard fans remember this, but he started off in the burgeoning LGBTQ vlogger community on YouTube before transitioning into music. And there was definitely a time where I was convinced that the major label system would eat him alive, like it has so many other musicians who originated on this platform that we all kind of reluctantly call home. But that didn't quite happen, mostly because Bloom Neighborhood went down among a lot of audiences and critics with a respectable amount of success, helped along by working with some pretty good producers and co-writers, and showing Troye Sivan evolving as a songwriter and a performer. He never quite wowed me in that brand of pop, but there was a lot of promise going forward. He had a lot of potential. And yet, even then, taking 3 years between albums did raise a couple of questions for me, especially when his lead-off singles were released months ago and didn't exactly seem to pick up a ton of traction, even if it did look like he was going to be getting looser and darker in his music. And some of his new production and writing team did raise some questions for me. Yes, Ariel Rechtsted is always a promising addition, but seeing Ali X as a co-writer, that did raise some of my suspicions, especially as I did not really like her project from last year. That said, he kept the majority of his production team from the last album, and somehow even netted a featuring credit from Ariana Grande, and he was smart enough to keep this a brisk 10 songs nearing around 35 minutes, so I had some hopes this would turn out as strong as, say, Years and Years' sophomore project that came out earlier this year and played in a lot of the same lane as a modest improvement. So alright, what did we get out of Bloom? Well, honestly, both more and less than I was expecting. The sort of pop record that I'd be inclined to say is somewhat transitional if I had any clue where Troye Sivan wanted to take this in the long term. Not so much messy as it is a little scattered, but in an oddly measured way that seems to pull a deeper punch that Blue Neighborhood had promised coming forward. Maybe it has to do with Jack Antonoff not being on the production team this time around, as he did contribute to the best songs off that album, but this is a pop album that, despite sounding assured and streamlined, lands a little bit less of a punch than I was hoping. A good release for sure, but definitely a few steps away from greatness. I'm not sure if this has earned all the critical acclaim that was been dumped its way. Again, it's a good album, but not really a great one. And pinning down why any of this is, in this particular case, is kind of tricky, because it's not like the sound or content seems to have changed all that much. Yeah, the reverb has thankfully been eased back to draw more attention to the warbling layers of synthesizers and touches of dreamy, distant guitar, but it's not like the blocky programmed percussion isn't still the primary focus to play against Troye Sivan's very thickly multi-track vocals, and it's not like they kick into the sort of driving bass grooves you'd find from, say, Charlie Puth or Years and Years. Troye Sivan, he's much more content to linger amidst the misty waves of tones. They owe considerable depth to the more restrained side of late 80s, early 90s synth pop and easy listening, just with a sharper, more restrained drum machine for more of the dance vibe. And you know, that could well be enough. The choppy vocal sampling of My, it's only grown on me since it's debuted on Billboard Breakdown, and when you factor in the guitars touching off against 17, or the pop-leaning title track and Plum, or the buzzy touches around Lucky Strike, you've got a selection of some restrained but pretty potent pop tunes. Hell, where that restraint really pays a lot of dividends is opposite Ariana Grande on Dance to This, with a solid electric guitar motif and just enough bite to complement them both really well. Easily the best song here. But it was that song that made me question why Ariana Grande was so much more compelling to me playing to restraint than Troye Sivan was. And it might come down to versatility as a performer. You might take issue with Ariana Grande belting in her more pop R&B mold, but it's a string to her bow that Troye Sivan doesn't really seem to have. And what holds many of his dance cuts here back from punching harder is how he never quite shows that raw edge or added notch of vocal intensity to really hook in a listener, with the most obvious case being on the closing song Animal, where a song about that particular brand of lust, it should not feel as sedate as this song does. And this before you get that wonky lo-fi beat shift that that doesn't really work. That's one of a few spots where Troye Sivan tries to add a little bit more diversity and bite to the production, but I'm not remotely convinced that it always works. The touches of organ and what sounds like a flute might click a little bit better on What a Heavenly Way to Die, but the plucked strings, they just don't mesh well on the overlong the good side. And incidentally, this is a song that should have been placed a lot further in the track listing, because it really kills the more dance-flavored momentum where it's placed right it is as the third song in. Just kind of slows things down. It's just not the best placement. Of course, the other side to this is a lot of the content, and if there is a place where I think this album might have stumbled a little bit coming off of Bloom Neighborhood, it might be here. Now, to be fair, if you're going for pure sensuous dance cuts, you don't really need a lot of nuance, and Troye Sivan playing into wistful, longing restraint does add some tension to cuts like the sexual exploration on 17, or the title track and Lucky Strike, and on Dance to This, the lyrics, they might feel mostly peripheral, but they're really all they need to be on that song. But then we got the relationship songs that seem to be calling for more emotional presence than we really get from Troye Sivan, like the letting him down easy breakup of The Good Side and Plum, or the tension between the missed small gestures on Postcard. And while I respect Troye Sivan for underplaying these admittedly smaller or more distant moments with some restraint and maturity, that's a step in the right direction, I can't help but feel like the writing is lacking that additional element of detail to match the vocal subtlety. Or he should have gone for pop melodrama with a little bit more presence. I have to think it might work better. Not doing either falls into this pleasant range, but not one that's all that gripping to me. And it makes me wish for lyrics that were coming off heavier territory, coming off the last album, and they don't really show up here. This is a bit of a shallower release. But at the end of the day, look, it's a good pop album. I don't think anybody could really deny that, and for the right classy dance club, I can imagine these songs will play quite well. But I'm left wishing that Troye Sivan was aiming just a little bit higher than this in his writing, or the grooves brought a little bit more organic tightness in a bass guitar, or he was willing to deliver a little bit more passion in his delivery. And while there are a few tunes that do stand out here, the continued focus on these blocky program beats over deeper melodies just doesn't click as much as I would like, and I'm not sure it'll wind up being all that memorable. The melodies just aren't that striking to me. So I guess for me, it's an extremely strong 6 out of 10 recommendation for fans, but you're not going to miss it that much if you don't check it out. Not at all bad, I'll say that again, and I'm curious where Troye Sivan will take this going forward, but I'm not exactly rushing the line either to find out. That's all. So yeah, thanks a lot for watching. I'd like to like and subscribe, I'd be more than grateful. Not a lot to say about this guy, but last review did well, figured I'd give him his full shot, and again, it's a good album, just not quite great, a little bit too restrained in this particular case for me. You want to buy it though? Links down there below, and I got the poll up there. I know this album's getting a lot of critical acclaim. I'm curious where you guys all fall on it, because I just think it might be a little overhyped in that lane. Beyond that, anything else I might be able to do to improve my presentation, I'm all ears. And if you guys want to get involved in my scheduling process to support this channel, link to my Patreon is right over there, where 3 times a week you guys get to vote for my schedule, and once a week for the higher tier contributors, you guys get to add albums, movies, or even a top 10 list to that schedule. More details right there. You want to see my schedule, it's on my Instagram, link down there below. But till then, I'm Mark, you're watching Spectrum Pulse, and I'll see you next time.